It's your girl Stacey Williams with Listen, Talk to Me. I want to tell you about this great app called Anchor. If you are in the market for a creative way to get your voice heard, to share the wealth of knowledge that you have experienced in your lifetime, well, I would tell you to start your very own podcast. Why not? You too have something to contribute in this lifetime. Why don't you do it with using Anchor? It's the easiest way to make your podcast. Let me explain. Very important. First and foremost, it's free. Yes, y'all, it is free. It's not going to cost you a dime. And you don't even have to worry about where am I going to get the equipment in order to start my podcast. There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit right here on Anchor, your very own podcast, right from your phone or computer in your very own home. It doesn't get any better than this, you guys. You don't even have to worry about how to reach your own listening audience because Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on the most popular platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can be making money from your very own podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. The only thing that you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started. Why not get started right now? Go ahead. I'll be listening. Hello.
Hello, I'm in.
You got it.
Yeah, I got it. Great. All right.
All right. I won't even waste any more time. I'm going to get right to it. I would
Okay.
like to introduce everyone to my godfather, to a God-fearing man, to an awesome man who cares about many people and tries to do the best that he can, none other than the Bernard Box.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Who's he talking about? I don't know, but okay.
I am talking about you. And before we even get into our topic today, which is about grief and closure, I just wanted to just double check to see how you're doing.
Very well, I think. But that's my own assessment there. Right? So
Good. I'm just making sure we're going in feeling good because I don't want this to be something that is depressing, but informative and yet transparent enough to allow people to know that they're not alone experiencing grief and closure in life. Okay.
Right.
One, because grief is universal. Two, because grief is, as much as it is universal, it is very personal. Grief doesn't follow a timeline or a schedule. It's different for everyone. So, Brother Bots, I call him Brother Bots. I call him Deacon. He used to have a lot of titles.
Right.
But I'm going to call you
Brother Bots. Yeah, it's good.
What is your definition of grief? Because the dictionary would call it deep sorrow, especially that caused by someone's death. But how would you define grief?
I like the dictionary version of it, but I know there's varying degrees of the grief. I've talked to Jewish friends who, still grieving 10 years later a loss, and that again would be based on their background in, belief and religion belief and things like that. So I had the grief training through the being a Christian, and I've been to the Christian grief things, but until it hits you, man, right, then it's a totally different ballgame. But I did know you have to go through, the 4 stages of grief, and the critical stage is the 3rd stage of whether you, turn that corner and come back to whatever normalcy is, or on that third stage you can fall off, and that's where you have the people who go into suicide and deep depression and all like that. And by the grace of God, I was able to turn that corner and come back to somewhat normalcy, or what we call normalcy. And I was on just last week, I was on a mental health symposium that we were doing through the church, and the author gave 10 characteristics of a person who need in mental stress and don't know it, and need it. And 7 out of those 10 characteristics I experienced during my grief period. So that's when I realized how close you are to being, actual mental case. And your mentality is altered during that period of grief,
Right.
You don't want to get up, don't want to shower, things like that, But I know through my faith, I was able to turn that corner because, Pastor counseled me personally.
Good.
But I also, being, working at the Joint Base, I also went to the Family Service Center. They offered grief. So I wanted to hear what the secular was offering too, as well as, through my faith and all, just to make sure I wasn't losing or missing any corners, any edge. So, and then having a close friend who, having gone through the loss of her spouse also. So she knew what I was going through before I even knew, and that was a great help. But everybody grieves in their own different way, And
absolutely.
For me, the getting rid of, here, take her clothes, here kids, take all her things like that. To some people were frowning on that. He's trying to get rid of her memory and things like that. So they wanted to control how I grieve, And then I reversed I flipped the script, and I realized that I can't control how you grieve. Because some people want to keep putting on Facebook every Valentine's Day, every birthday, every day that she's off, and they put the big memories up there, and that's the way they grieve, and that's the way they grieve the memory. Whereas I look at it, it's reminding me, and then I realized that's their way, and this is my way. So that's thank you, and even all the way down to the children, the one son, erect the memorial to her in the backyard and all that, and the other son just never even brings her up. It's a fine line, and recognizing how each one carries it. But the blessing is being that I'm remarried, and she totally understands. And if I'm sitting there crying for no reason, it is a reason, And if we could be walking through Boscov, and somebody bypasses me with the same scent, the same perfume that she wore, and poof, my eyes are wet and everything just from that smell, and to be understanding of that, that's a great help, rather than be told, oh, come on, you should be over it by now. It's it has a lot of facets to it. So just the other day, just last week, even though it's been 2.5 years, I was out, walking on a walk just by myself. And at just one view, I said, man, we used to walk here. And down came the tears and all. So from what I understand from her, because she lost hers 25 years ago, she says you never really get on, you're going to have those aha moments, whether it's Christmas or something that's just going to remind you. And it's okay. It's okay. But, you get back to yourself. So that's right.
Well, I got to slow you down because you just gave us so many nuggets that we could talk about. One thing I would like to do is get our listeners up to where we are. First and foremost, they're going to wonder, well, why were you even grieving? My godfather obviously went through a deep sorrow in losing his wife, Rose Botts, who was my godmother. How many years were you two married?
40 years. But we had met. Years. Yeah, we had met 7 years prior. High school sweethearts and all that. So 47 years total. Right.
A beautiful love story. 47 years. So when he was talking about that fine line of, losing yourself and, those signs that were provided at the conference that he was at.
Right.
Listen, if he mentioned having a support, he was going to his pastor. He went to what his Air Force base had to offer. He had a close friend at that time, knowing what he would face beside him. So you mentioned 4 stages, but I believe the psychiatrist who originated this has 5 stages of grief.
Okay.
The first one being denial,
Right.
second one anger, third one bargaining, fourth one depression, fifth one acceptance.
Okay.
So when you talked about the third one being hard, were you talking about depression?
No, the third one, the second one was anger. Okay. So
Right.
I was very conscious of, man, I don't want to, don't get angry, don't display anger, don't want to get angry. And I went to the VA, Veterans Administration. I had to pick up a form from them, okay, from the building. I went to the Veterans, had to pick up a form dealing with her passing that you had to file with the veteran. So 10 minutes, I should go in, get the form, and leave. But the counselor there, and it was a female counselor, a young lady, she just had me there and asking questions. I thought, what is, just give me the form and let me, and she was, asking questions. It turns out when I went back to research, she was a grief counselor. So she knew the stage I was in. And she said, do you mind if I show you something? I said, what? She said, you are in the anger stage, and I was just talking to her about how I wanted to avoid. So I was in the anger stage and didn't realize, but she knew it. So all the while, it was just crazy, So the anger is, yeah. So you do, the phases you're going to go, you just got to go. It's got to run its course as far as I'm concerned.
Right. So with hearing those 5 stages, would you say you went through all 5, the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance?
I don't remember denying, that.
Okay. So it varies for people.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
So just so that our listeners can understand, you don't have to necessarily go through all 5 stages, but you may, hit 2 or 3, whatever you experience will not be exactly like someone else's experience. Grief is very personal. It as much as it's universal, it is very personal to each being. I do know that grief does not have to just be experienced in the loss of someone's death. It could be through a divorce. It could be through what is basically life-altering to you. It could be a loss of a job.
Right.
So grief is not just experienced in losing a loved one. It can be experienced in a life-changing experience.
Exactly.
And it's different for all of us.
Right.
So another thing that my godfather did share with us, and I want to let him know how thankful I am of how forthcoming he was of this process of what we could call closure. I remember when he talked about insurance.
Right.
And how you made mention that you need to have insurance for at least 2 years active before you're diagnosed.
Yeah, this is set
with terminal illness.
Yeah, this was set not just cancer, but it was set by the insurance agency that once you purchase life insurance, that they have a right, if that person expires within the 2-year period since you purchased, that they have a right to investigate, to find out if you, in fact, had this condition, then went out and bought the insurance. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So, yeah, they have a right to hold up. Normally, if you have life insurance, once the person expires, you go to set the funeral arrangements. The funeral director can call the insurance company right there and do all the work himself. Hey, this lady expired now. So when we did that, the funeral director called and they told her, well, no, we're not paying out right now because she was within that 2-year period. We have the right to investigate to find out, what kind of background, what the thing like that. And through their investigation, they found out, no, she developed this cancer, and within 3 months later, she was gone. So when she did sign up, she was perfectly healthy. And they could tell by the records, the only pill she was on, one pill, Hazar or something like that, has nothing to do with cancer. So it ran its course. And 6 months later, they did pay out. But normally they'll jump on that when it's a large payout, in millions, because you have a lot of people who are scammed, companies, things like that.
Correct. So they're making sure it's not a pre-existing condition
that you're not scamming an insurance company. The blessing was for me that I had the money to pay for, and could wait the 6-month period or however long it took them to do their investigation, and eventually they did pay out. So that was good.
Wow, that's good information, because where, again, you are in a financial place where that was doable, many people are not in that financial space to take care of that. And that alone is detrimental to one's being while they're grieving. So to not be able to take care of funeral expenses because of something like this. So it's good to be informed about these things ahead of time, because it's amazing how we celebrate the birth, but yet we're so uninformed about death. We go to classes for the birth, we look up books, we buy books, but it for some reason there's some stigma of, well, if you inform yourself about death, you need help, something's wrong with you. So we want to make sure that we're normalizing the information that is available. And you brought up the funeral service or the funeral home. I was able to go to my local funeral home, and you would be amazed at the information that they are willing to give you for free. They will walk you through the whole process as to what happens once a loved one has expired or has died, and you are able to give them a call, and they'll walk you through the whole process as to how the undertaker comes and gets the body, if that is necessary, how they keep the body, how you get to pick out the casket, all of that, and insurance information. So my thing is, again, my point is, do not wait to find yourself having to figure things out when you need to grieve. Because what happens is many people are not able to grieve because they don't know this process. And then you're surrounded by family members because they're there wanting to help and, wanting their closure too. And then after, if there is a funeral service, everyone leaves, you're by yourself, and it's quiet. So again, we want to be able to inform our listeners today about how you should be aware of some of these things that we could call closure. Another point that you brought up, Brother Bots, which I thought was very interesting, is the closing off of bank accounts. Is it true that if you're not on your spouse's bank account, it can become a lot of red tape in closing out the account?
As long as you have the written will, as long as you're the executor of the will, that makes all the difference. So it's the very second statement on the will where it says, my spouse is the 100% executor of my money. So immediately after the death, you have to go to the courthouse. I had to go to the courthouse in Mount Holly and present this will to whoever the courthouse, attorney is. If you go in there without that will, she immediately freezes all my wife's assets. So she freezes them, and she'll give you the statement. You got to take it back to her account, her bank, her credit union, whatever. But it says on there, I am the, Mount Holly or whatever. Freeze her accounts. Do not give out any of, because I do not have proof that he's the executor. And then you have to go through all that rigmarole. So you must have that. I can't overemphasize having that will. A week later, I remembered, wait a minute, we did do wills, and I found the box that they were in. So I went back to that same lady in the courthouse. And when I presented her that will, she changed everything. She took all the restrictions off, and all of her accounts were directly open, and able to put them into a, what do they call those accounts? A trust? Something like an estate. Yeah, they open a state account and put all her monies in there, because you're going to have people who come in and say, she owes me this, she owes for that, she owes for that. But she knew in advance. and I found 15 of her credit cards, and each one of them I called. She knew she was, and she had paid every one of them off in a minute. Every one I called. Right. I do want to mention that the downfall I had was because I was diagnosed as a diabetic 25 years ago. That in my own mind, I had already conjured up that I was going first. So all the insurances and everything, I had it top loaded for myself. It had minimum on her, anticipating that I'm going first, and that was a mistake. And so everything I'm telling all the men now, don't just assume, because you have pre-existing that you're not God. Only God knows how it's done that way. So I had everything set up, anticipating I'm going to leave. She's going to be able to pay this off, do that, pay that, do that, and she left work. Amen. So,
what about closing cell phone, like turning in the cell phones and social media?
Yeah, the social media, Facebook. If you call them, I had to call them and then send a copy of the death, and they were very gracious about it then. The hardest part I had was she had, let me see, I can't even keep track. She had so many charities that she sent. And this guy, who is it? I can see his face. He's still sending things out, 3.5, we've written letters to him and asked him, hey, Charles Stanley. Yeah. So, his place is still sending out, Ms. Bodge, you helped us in the past. I keep trying to tell them, listen, we've written. So I think they finally caught on 2.5 years later and stopped sending, to them. But we're still getting mail, to her from all these different charities that she supported in the past. And that's just something you deal with.
Right. So outstanding that, again, you could still be giving even though you're not physically there. Your life witness and life testament still speaks volumes even though you're no longer physically here on the earth. So our choices truly matter. The things that we do in life truly matter. When it came to the cell phone, how did the carrier?
I physically went into Verizon. At the time, we weren't in the pandemic. Yeah, right. So I physically went in with her phone, and they deactivated everything right then. Right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So they were able to help.
They didn't question or anything.
That's good.
They took me for it. So.
Yeah, because I know sometimes we password a lot of things, our phones, our laptops, and things like that. Like recently, a family member got into an accident, and he said that a Good Samaritan took his phone and called his girlfriend. And I was thinking in my head, wow, it's a good thing that you were conscious, because if you were unconscious, how would they know the password to get into your phone to contact your loved one? So did you run into any problems as far as things being password protected?
No. She had a little book with all her passwords and every credit card and everything. She had it I still have the book. Right. Yeah, so she had written down all her passwords, and so
that's awesome. That is awesome. So again, a word of wisdom to couples and people in relationships: you can't be so private that they don't have that information, especially if it becomes a necessity to have.
Now, credit cards want proof. You have to send the death certificate or a copy of the death certificate before they'll close out her credit card accounts and things like that. You have to prove that she is. Right.
Absolutely. You also touched on in the beginning of when you were sharing with us about something very powerful. You said, not only did I have to realize that, I'm grieving one way, and I'm processing my
Mm-hmm.
grief one way, but I have to respect how others
Exactly.
are grieving, even though they may have a lot to say about
Right.
my process. I'm learning not to say anything about
Right.
their
Right.
process. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because that's deep, and that's something very important that I don't think a lot of us take the time to think about. Because many people will complain about so and so wasn't there, and I'm mad at this person because they didn't
Right.
do this. And this might be freeing information to them to understand that we all grieve
Mm-hmm.
differently, and in the midst of your grief, to have understanding for someone
Right.
else's grief. If that is not the heart of
Right.
God, my Lord, that's
Right.
that's love. So tell us more about that.
One thing I read about was grief for us, who are saved, in our faith. It's because we have that new heart and a heart that loves so deeply. Therefore, grief hits us harder, because we love harder. So, but I had to realize that, I was getting a little upset with, getting calls from, well, you need to do this. Why would you give her this away, and why are you giving her clothes away? And I'm like, because I'm the husband, and that's the way I choose, But then I had to realize that
Right.
they don't grieve the way I do. My way of handling the grief was,
Right.
starting a new life, starting a new this, getting a new that, and I'm still 2.5 years later, I'm still finding things in the house that belong to her. Matter of fact, I found 3 dresses now. I'm put in cleaners and give to you to give away in Cherry Hill,
Wow.
down in Camden where you did outreach.
Right.
But the memories are there. She's still alive as long as you have memory, of it. So you're not getting rid of her, She's gone on to glory. Her soul, her spirit is gone. But as long as you're alive
Right.
and have active memory of her, she's still alive, in your mind.
Right.
So, but that's but don't just as much as I don't want anyone stepping on my way of grieving, I have to be conscious not to step on your way of grieving. So that's
awesome. Awesome. Good point. And I do know another nugget to put here for our listeners would be this: communicate with your spouse, because just as Brother Bernard was talking about, he was thinking he would be the first to go, but only God knows. We're to live today as if today is our last. So you should be talking to your spouse about, hey, if I was to die, these are my wishes. And I release you to do the following. Because a lot of people have a lot to say about, oh, they remarried, and it's too soon, or it's too, they still by themselves. They need to get with somebody. Listen, if your spouse tells you, listen, I release you to move on, and please just cremate my body. Don't do no casket. Don't listen. People can say what they have to say about their decision, but your peace will come from knowing your loved one's wishes. Okay, you can't make everybody happy, but if you have the will of your loved one and what they would have wanted and how they want it done, that is going to be your anchor of peace in the midst of all.
And we did discuss, a scenario. If I go for it, here's what, and she only gave me one person, one young lady that we knew, that she said, you better not marry her. Anyone else. That was, but I'm saying after 47 years of being, with someone and growing and, and learning, you get to know each other inside out, backward, forward, and things like that. And then somebody called me, a young lady that I respect, and she said, oh, well, welcome to your new norm. In other words, she was saying the singleness. I was saying to myself, I don't know that single is my norm. I'm used to, being married. I'm used to talking to somebody and sharing and all like that. So I refuse to accept that as my norm. And we had discussed, remarrying. And so that's what I did. And of course, you upset some folks. You married too soon. The other one is not your business. I just point to my shoes. Hey, you like to wear my shoes? You like to be in my shoes?
Right.
Then you can comment. Otherwise, you can stay out. So.
Wow. So that That is, again, thank you for sharing something very powerful about respecting other people's grief as you are grieving. That how mature of a point that you just made with that. So thank you for sharing that one. Yes.
That is
It's
good.
all right, Brother Box. And as we're gonna bring this to a close, is there any encouragement or anything else that you would feel is fitting for our listeners to know about everything?
No, it's just that, keep the faith. It's a blessing that I have a goddaughter like you who, you stuck to by my side, through the times I was going through, and your understanding and non-judgmental, and that's been a plus and a help. And there are people out there who are sincere about helping you, and you got to remember that you're totally vulnerable at that time. So you have to be on God not to make any major decisions during that grief period, that you'll later regret, So, and then with the, two sons, a lot of people ask me, well, how did your son feel about, so-and-so that you married? I said, well, in my case, they were grown. So I wasn't looking for a mother to raise my kids, which was a blessing. But I do know from her side, her two daughters were a little skeptical about, and we had the meeting and all that. I explained to them, well, I'm not really marrying you, so you don't trust me yet because you don't know me or what have you. That's a problem you're going to have to deal with. We know each other, we love each other, and we're going on with getting married. And the one of them came around immediately. The other one's a little standoffish. She's the protector, and just have to ride her out. She'll come around eventually. So,
all right. So you live in that one by faith.
Of course, my two sons were totally happy. They knew the lady. They were receptive to her, and that means they don't have to check on me now. They know you got somebody covered. So that's a blessing. Amen.
Yeah. So that's another big point to make too, because I don't think we include our children as much as we probably should. We tend to talk to our spouses about, hey, if I was to die, these are my wishes, and if you were to die, da 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 da. But do we ever disclose that information to our children? And I think it would probably be different for every household how that is managed. But it's your choice how you go about that. But we can see how it can become a hindrance or maybe a blockage when you do proceed forward, because like you said, some of our children raise up to be in the position of the protector because a parent has gone on. And especially in a boy's case, when the father is not in the home, they tend to move into that role of protector over their mom, and other types of roles our children can kind of slide into when a parent has gone on. So that is something that I believe we could do better with in that time of grief, when that time has come to be transparent with your children as far as where you are in your stage of grief, as far as what your wishes are going forward, so that everyone is able to grieve in their way as we continue to process forward. Wow, I never thought about that.
So many family arguments are where the children are divided on how to handle mom or how to handle dad if they pass on. I want to cremate. No, she wanted to be. You get that stuff straightened out now while you're conscious and live, and make it clear to them. Here's what I want, and here's how I'm doing it. Or I give the authority to the firstborn to make all the decisions and make it clear. So there's no fight and squabble and all that.
That's a good point. Oh man, so many nuggets you have shared in this episode of Grief and Closure. Thank you. I can't thank you enough for your transparency and honesty, because you really will never know how this information is going to help someone who's listening. But I pray in your heart you really do know that. You are helping a lot of people with your honesty and transparency. Is there anything else? Because at this point, I'm just like in awe of the information that you're just sharing with me. Like, wow, I never thought about that. And yeah, that could be an issue. But how we need to really, as a family, start communicating better with one another.
For sure. Good. I think that's it.
Okay. All right. I thank you for your time. I cannot thank you enough. And even with this, I think it's fitting for me to say I want to give you your flowers while you are alive versus waiting to give flowers at a casket. So while you are still alive, I want to thank you for doing the best that you could, Brother Bots. Because like you said, we could sit here and plan, oh, this is what I would do. Until it hits you, until grief knocks at your door, you really don't know how you're going to react. But you did it graciously, Brother Bots. You learned a lot of lessons, and you bettered yourself from those lessons, and you're still giving God the glory. Where many people sometimes fall from the faith, you held on. God held on to you, because he never loses his sheep. And I just want to thank you for being the man that you are and continuing to be so, that you think of others. Again, I can't tell my listeners enough. This man thinks of others out of the blue. Like you're just living life, and he will email you, text you, or call you. Are you in need of anything? Or I have this and I'm giving it away. Can you use it? I mean, this is the type of man my godfather is. If he knows you, he is there trying to help you. And I'm sure anyone that knows him can say the same. So I want to thank you for being the man that you are, Brother Box. See how humble he is. Thank you. Okay. Oh, God bless you, Brother.
All right.
Thank you again for your time.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.